Well, Stephen, thanks so much for being part of this conversation series. The future is calling us to greatness.
It's a delight to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Cool. So I've been asking all my guests at the start to help us really get who you are. Like, don't be bashful. Like, share with us what you're most well known for, what you're most passionately committed to, a little background, how you got to be where you are, and feel free to take your time.
Great. Well, I'm best known for being the CEO and founder of the Shift Network, which has touched hundreds of thousands of people around the world and really serving up a lot of content and teachings and trainings that help us evolve our consciousness and evolve our world. I originally got the vision for this 10 years, or actually 14 years ago now. So this is a third iteration. During a meditation retreat right after the turn of the millennium, I was working for the Esalen Institute and had some vague sense of being called to something more than what I was doing, which was creating think tank conferences on leading edge subjects. And I knew it had something to do with going beyond being a more academic treatment of how we evolve to the next level to really empowering people in how to do that. So this vision downloaded really over 3 days. It felt like it came from a very high place, well beyond my conscious mind or even like my higher mind, and just was like streamed in a lot of details about creating a network of the people who are awakening a new consciousness and a new culture. And that it was going to be vital to have web platforms that empower the interconnection of those people the world over, but eventually media platforms and then local centers where people would really be animating, embodying, and enacting this new way of living, which is about living in a truly sacred way and making this earth an expression of our higher potential. And so that means making it healthy and sustainable and peaceful and prosperous and really getting along as one human family, one global culture. But at the root of that is a kind of a spiritual awakening or a spiritual recognition that has to flow from seeing ourselves in our own divinity, as well as expressing that and seeing the divinity in others. So we move beyond seeing that only one religious tradition has got it right, or my God is better than your God, that we're really seeing the sacred expressed through the many facets of the larger diamond of human culture. So anyway, I first got that download, tried to get it off the ground. Did not work out the first time. Ended up with a lot of debt and a lot of learnings, and then had to kind of back my way into a second version with the Institute of Noetic Sciences under a nonprofit. Eventually, I needed to pull out of that as well, even though it was moderately successful. We had 10,000 people paying $10 a month to be part of that around the world, and so now in the latest iteration, it's been 4.5 years, and it really does feel like the fruition of a life work. And I think that I probably couldn't have actually done what we've done 14 years ago. So the universe kind of tricked me into getting going on it early enough that I could build the skills and the network and the capacity to really move things forward. So what we do is we're really looking at a very full spectrum approach to making the shift to a new culture. So we do big telesummits on everything from from conscious parenting to enlightened business to spring of sustainability, winter of wellness. We've done things that are more focused on things like the Enneagram or new paradigm economics. And then we also have about 70 programs of courses and trainings that help people go to the next level personally. That could be in their own spiritual growth. We have things like the Christ path that are more coming out of the Christian religion. That we also have things like the Enlightened Business Academy, where people really get entrepreneurial skills. We have women's programs, health-oriented programs, a whole variety of things. And then we're gradually going to be building this next phase. So I really feel like we're still in the phase one of the original download that I got, where we build a web platform and courses and trainings that really kind of aggregate more of the best teaching and evolutionary thought out there. And then the next phase is to really create much more multimedia platforms, TV, video, radio, film, and then moving to these local centers and hubs and really activating a whole global network of those. So I've had to learn to be a lot more patient and allow for organic unfolding, even while holding this bigger vision that it was originally given to me to bring in. And so on a personal level, I'm very appreciative and love the inheritance we've gotten from all the different spiritual traditions, and I've practiced with Eastern teachers, very much have a deep connection with Jesus as a guide, and shamans and shamanic ceremonies. And I really kind of see us as now we're coming to harvest the full panoply of the gifts of all the world traditions right now, and to learn how to kind of to get harvest the best from each lineage and help us grow and evolve to the next level.
That's great. That's a wonderful overview. One of the things that I've become aware of just in talking with others is that I think that there's some people that don't have a fuller picture or a complete picture of what the Shift Network is about, and because there's at least among some people sort of the perception that it's mostly about just sort of personal wholeness and healing the individual, transforming the individual, helping the individual to evolve, and I get that it is all that, or there's a lot of it that is that, but that there's a piece that I think is often missed by people, which is that is part of a larger process so that we can be a greater blessing to the future, that we can help transform culture, that we can help humanity come into right relationship with the planet and that sort of thing. So could you say anything about that, since the title of this series is The Future is Calling Us to Greatness?
I feel like ultimately there's a co-evolution of our interiors and the exterior world. And so that the real shift and real change in the planet has to be made manifest in how we do things differently with each other. Mm-hmm. So we have done a lot of stuff that's on the interior work and the interior development, partially because when you have an individual making a decision about what they want to invest their time and money in, it often is important that they're seeing some tangible evolutionary benefit for themselves. And so paid programs tend to lend themselves often more to things that are about the interior development, but we always try to pair some element of how does this shift your relationships? How does this shift the world? How do you, there's some courses are very explicit about that, like the Peace Ambassador training, where you're really training people to think about systems and shifting systems. Some are, it's a little more in the background, but it's often part of the philosophy of many of our teachers as well, that there has to be this co-evolution, that we're going beyond the time when it's all about just personal awakening and personal transformation, because there are urgent needs, from climate change to war in the Middle East to economic challenges as we reach our maximum population growth on the planet of about 10 billion by 2050. We have to figure out, how do we really design a long-term, sustainable, beautiful, empowering, wonderful culture that can work for 10 billion people on this planet, because that's about what we're going to end up with.
Yeah, I mean, my heart is so with you in terms of the basic impulse. I think I may be a tad more pessimistic in terms of the impact of drought and famine that I see as probably better than 50% chance for some parts of the world. I think that there is the possibility that we could see 8 to 10 billion people, certainly if things continue in the way they are. But I think it's possible that with drought, with famine, with some of the other large-scale challenges that hell, who knows? Even Ebola, for all we know, could have a bigger difference. But I think that it's possible that we'll see less than that. But in any event, whether there's 4 billion people or 2 billion people or 10 billion people 100 years from now, however many there is, we need to have a more what Thomas Berry used to call a mutually enhancing relationship with the natural world upon which we depend utterly. And I completely agree that it's both an inner and outer and a social process. I'm curious, what are some of the things that you've learned now with the Shift Network that you've been sort of most proud of or gratified, that just really either exceeded expectations or just went really, really well, and you can see it continuing to ripple out? And what would you say are some of the greatest learnings or things that where you would perhaps do things differently? So both sort of the successes and some of the growing edge.
Yeah, well, I think some of the things that I hadn't anticipated doing, for instance, was like this course on the Christ path. Because we're originally, in a way, kind of post-denominational in our approach to spirituality. But in talking and spending some time with Andrew Harvey, who's the teacher of that, it really became evident that part of what we can offer is what's the next iteration of any particular lineage. And so to really harvest the beauty and depth and power of the Christian lineage and then bring it into a more global context. And so the Christ path, it became one of our most successful courses, and it continued to ripple out, and people really having a powerful impact. And so another I also think
with an amazing teacher like Andrew Harvey too. That's not surprising to me.
Yeah. And that part of it is, it's like, for somebody like Andrew, who's traveled the world all over the place and often to not necessarily large rooms of people. I mean, for him, it's like so gratifying to teach to hundreds of people globally at the same time from the comfort of his home. So there's a real beauty in being able to multiply these really key voices. And I think each teacher that is with Andrew, he's got 40 years of scholarship and mystical experience in literature, and he just has a penetrating quality. So when you get exposed to him for 7 weeks, 12 weeks, 9 months, there's an ignition in consciousness. There's a shift and opening, and people experience tremendous healings in relationship to the Christian tradition and in relationship to Jesus as a guide and pioneer, and also opening to a more full spectrum approach to the sacred life. Mm-hmm. I also think on the sort of the social impact side, we've done a lot with the Peace Ambassador program. We've done cycles every year of the Summer of Peace. Originally did Peace Week. We're going to be launching a World Peace Building Library. I think we have, 400 or 500, something like, no, it's maybe 200 of the major peace builders of the world have contributed to that in different ways. And so the Peace Ambassador training, I think we have 900 graduates at this point. Wow. And they've really gotten some really great skills for interior development, conflict transformation, as well as working in their communities. We've had more than a dozen international cities of peace come out of that. We've got 30 or 40 folks in Oakland who are working on the front lines and really have Oakland, California become a template for a city of peace. We have partnerships that are aiming to create 1,000 cities of peace in the coming years. We're looking at a whole range of things. So I feel like what we've done is helped to thread together the larger narrative of peace from the inner to the international, and bring together many pioneers in a collaborative way and platform, and do so in a way that also gives people very concrete skills. Another one that came to mind was I would say it's not as fully developed yet, but I feel like we've done some interesting work with the healing between the kind of predominant white Western culture and indigenous cultures. We've done a number of shamanic courses that have done very well. We've done several things with the International Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers. Mm-hmm. We also did a declaration of commitment to indigenous peoples that was signed by 10,000 people online and actually presented to the two of the representatives of the 13 indigenous grandmothers for safekeeping. So we've made some stands there and made contributions in different ways and helped to seed knowledge. And it feels like there's more to come in that arena of really trying to bridge between cultures. And then in the future, we really want to look at how can we bring some high leverage, high impact ways that we're leveraging the consciousness work to focus on really sticky global situations. Like I'm personally thinking a lot about the Middle East these days, and how can we be a catalyst for greater healing there. We made a contribution to a group in Bethlehem that we're looking at partnering more actively with, and actually we made a couple of contributions in Israel and Palestine, and just sort of feeling into what's the best impact there. So I think that those are going to be really key in the future.
Yeah. Well, and I know you've done some work with two other people that are participating, or at least two, maybe more other people that are participating in this particular conference, The Future is Calling Us to Greatness, both with Barbara Marx Hubbard and I think Dwayne Elgin as well, and perhaps others. I know Barbara has spoken very highly about the work she's been doing.
Yeah, well, with Barbara, we activated something that was very ambitious, that was aligned with a vision she had been given of like creating a moment for humanity where we're acknowledging the birth of a new era. And she particularly thought it would be unique and interesting to do so on the first day after the end of the last Mayan calendar, because she was saying, well, what we know for sure is when the last Mayan calendar ends, we know there's going to be day one of the new calendar. And so she thought it was an auspicious moment to create a unifying feeling globally, and we did activate that, and we had a major event at the Agape Spiritual Center in LA. We had many of the New Paradigm teachers and luminaries speak for that. We had 40 different broadcast locations around the world, from places from Byron Bay, Australia, to Rishikesh, to Giza, to Jerusalem. So all these different events that kind of linked together in consciousness and had their own celebrations of the birth of a new era. So we've done some great stuff with Barbara, and also she's been really focused on training people now in co-creative skills, because that's at the foundation of how do we create a new era. The way I see it is 2012 marked the end of the kind of the masculine dominant era, or some people call it patriarchy, but patriarchy often has a loaded connotation, but we're really moving into sacred balance between the masculine and feminine. And so that means that developing more skills of co-creation between our other people and even within ourselves, so that we're really learning not to just impose through force or through will, but through a real dance of creative energies.
Yeah.
And I think as we do that more as a society, we create a co-creative world where because in the last era, it's like either you're at the top of the decision making or you were cannon fodder. Like it wasn't very great for most of the men either, frankly, in the last era, because it was like everybody's, few people at the top pushing agendas around and not a lot of space for the flourishing of the all.
Well, one of the things I so appreciated about Barbara's event was that it gave the lie to the misunderstanding that some secular people and others had. That so many people in the New Age, New Thought, New Paradigm, integral movement were really expecting the end of the world. That it wasn't that at all. It was and the fact that Barbara chose the day after the supposed end of the world to really launch this mythic mindset and commitment to building and co-creating a just, healthy, and sustainably life-giving future, and that most of us know in our gut it has to take some form other than dominance. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, how do you personally, I mean, here you're in touch with so many spiritual leaders and so many people involved in the transformation of individual consciousness and working toward, sort of how do we transform our systems as well. How do you personally stay inspired on a day-by-day basis to do the great work you're doing in the face of some pretty scary stuff? I mean, peak oil, climate change, overpopulation, species extinction. I mean, there's some really bad news that can be really scary and overwhelming. How do you stay inspired to be in action?
I mean, first of all, I think there's no other choice but to try to be part of the positive shift, because if we surrender to the gloom and doom, it's like it's intrinsically we'll tend to just go towards self-protection and carving out our own little niche that maybe we make our lives a little bit better for ourselves, but while the rest of the planet goes to hell. So I feel like it's an imperative just to take a stand for the positive, to move towards it. But I'm not going to pretend I don't go through waves of dismay. I mean, I felt like I check CNN headlines a couple times a day between other things, and I'll pay more attention and read more at night in magazines. And every day and every week there are things that I find really dismaying. And I also I'm aware that what we see in the headlines is not always the accurate pulse of the planet. It's like the last couple of years have been the fastest turnaround towards solar technology and renewable energy that anybody could have anticipated. Even like the most optimistic forecasts it was never going to turn as quickly as it has, and it's really on an accelerated path now. We see things, breakthrough technologies, like once you hit a tipping point, it's like the electric cars are starting to hit a tipping point. It's like we really have the chance to, Amory Lovins laid it all out. He said, when he drew a big picture map, it's like, it's without any government intervention, he thinks that, I believe the stats where we could be 75% renewable on this planet by 2040. And that's without any government intervention, just based upon like the acceleration of all these different trends. So when you see on the macro level that for the most part, with some blips up and down, like the planet has gotten more peaceful. We have fewer wars. They're still painful, terrible ones, but that on the whole, we're getting better at that. We're getting, all the European countries are no longer destroying each other the way they were 100 years ago. We have shifts towards sustainable lifestyles in different ways. People are getting in pockets, getting healthier, happier, more vibrant, more thriving, and they're getting better at marketing and sharing that out to the world so that those innovations begin to replicate. Yeah. That's what really gives me hope, because when I look around, like my friends and allies and co-leaders, I see a lot of people who are really thriving and really being great examples of conscious eldering, people in their 80s who are making their biggest contribution, people who have amazing marriages, people who have really, who are in amazing shape at 65 or having the best sex of their lives at 70. It's like people are kind of learning how the human game works better and how we can actually really be embodiments of our true divine essence and not just be like, kind of overweight and sluggish and war-torn and depressed. It's like we're really getting better at producing high-functioning people en masse, but we haven't done it on the global scale yet. We still have massive systemic things. But if you look at those two trends, it's like those lines start to cross each other, whether it's just, all the solar technology people have been saying for years, it's like, we got to do it, and all of a sudden it crosses a tipping point, and we're going to see there was more I believe there was more new solar power installed this year so far in the global grid than old school, coal plants and other stuff, fossil fuels. So that's a massive shift in the entire infrastructure, and it's going to have huge implications for geopolitics as well, since there's a lot of geopolitics driven by the resource scarcity. And if everybody's more self-sufficient with their energy needs, that definitely mitigates war and some of the spend on defense. So there's some deep reasons for positivity if you track the deeper trends of what's going on and see all the emergence. But you have to kind of titrate how much of the mainstream media news you take, because it's just death, destruction, and warfare. And it's important that we have some cognizance of it and that we're related to it. We're trying to solve it, but we also not so much that it overwhelms our sense of positive initiative and excitement to be part of the change moving forward.
Yeah, well said. I mean, one of the things that actually has gotten to the place where I actually regularly go on media fasts, because what gets called, and for 99% of human history, as I'm sure you well know, the news that we were exposed to were things that we could at least potentially make a difference with. Now we're exposed to things globally, and yet even people who don't believe in evolution play on our evolutionary instincts for fascination, titillation, sensation, fear, all the kinds of things that we're programmed to pay attention to. And a lot of most of it's episodic trivia, and even the things that aren't, they're usually things where we can't necessarily make a difference, and yet we only have so much emotional time and energy. So our emotions get engaged by these things that happen all around the world where we can't necessarily make a difference. And so the challenge is, to, as you say, expose yourself to what's going on so we're not completely oblivious, and yet also find the things where you can really are inspired to be in action, given your own gifts, given your own passion and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm reminded of a quote from Tom Atlee when he says, when people ask him how he thinks we're doing as a species, he says, well, it seems to me things are getting better and better and worse, faster and faster.
That's a great way to say it.
And of course, now the growing edge is things have been getting better and better for humans. And now we need to start really focusing on some of those systemic things so they can also get better, so that we can be a part of the mythic frame I like is that humans beginning to become not a cancer in the body of life where we consume the body of life for our benefit, but where we take on being the immune system, where we protect and foster and defend the health and well-being of this planet, this body that we're a part of. And I think that's a vision of greatness that can inspire young people and old to.
It's kind of the higher octave of the natural masculine impulse, which is to be a protector. So it's like if the masculine energy has been too caught up in trying to compete to dominate in order to not get squashed in the last era. Now it's like taking that same protective instinct to you consecrate it to the whole planet and all ecosystems. You're no longer just protecting yourself or your family; you're protecting the whole. Yes. And I think that's a really noble and evolutionary approach to the next level of the masculine expression too, which is also balanced with the feminine as a natural desire to nurture the whole as well.
Yep. Amen. Well, there's one question that's kind of off the wall, just to wind down here, but Connie has asked me to ask it of all my guests, and I've been doing so and been getting some fabulous responses, and I purposely don't let you know about it ahead of time. So if you had the opportunity to have a dinner party with any three people in human history, so it was you and these three people, or the opportunity in a one-on-one setting, on a hike, or over a cup of coffee or beer or whatever, who would those three people be, and why would you choose them?
That's a great question. So yeah, I think that, obviously, Jesus for me would be key, partially because I just, I've done a lot of practices in other tradition, and I really appreciate other traditions, but I still feel like he's been more my primary inspiration of what does a template for a new divine human look like. So I think it'd be nice to have a supper, hopefully not a last supper with him, but have a meal with him. I think that, there's, I kind of want to be a little bit provocative with this. There's part of me that wouldn't necessarily want to follow through on it, because what I find is it's kind of nice to have people that are on pedestals. I find that when you get to know people, you start to relating to them, you realize they're human, they've got their quirks, they've got their challenges, and I think we put out things featuring 1,000 different teachers and 70 different faculty. So I've gotten to know all these people, and so there are very few people left on a pedestal for me, which is sort of refreshing and
Yes.
normal and human, but
Yeah.
it's also like, it's like I kind of want a few heroes that are like I can kind of idealize that are like beyond versus just like friends or allies that I respect
Yeah.
and I think they're doing good work, but it's sort of like that kind of like wow reaction. So I think what happens is anytime you get up close and personal, it's like with somebody, it's like being a human being is complex. We're multidimensional and so I think it would be obviously great to spend time with like, a Gandhi or Martin Luther King. I think recently some people that would have come to mind that I think would be fascinating to get to meet would be like Ellen Johnson Sirleaf or Václav Havel. I'm particularly interested these days in people who have really taken a deeper spirit and brought it into the political sphere in a
Yeah.
way that I really respect and admire. And I thought Barack Obama was going to do more of that, but I feel like he hasn't lived up to what I was anticipating he was going to be able to carry forward in terms of like that the wedding of a deep consciousness and a sensibility of like politics, transformational politics. So I think that I would certainly wouldn't pass up the opportunity to be with all these luminaries, but I also know that okay, well, it's going to probably take them off the pedestal now.
Well, it's so funny. I love your response, by the way. It's just absolutely brilliant. And I can resonate it with it myself because for 12 years, Connie and I have traveled North America and we've developed friendships with just so many people who I, have had up on pedestals and I still see as older brothers and sisters on the path and people doing great work. But you're so right. When you get to know people, we're all human. We're all, angels with assholes. That's just what we are. But it was funny. The other day, I asked Bill McKibben this question, and he just paused for a moment, and he said, if I had to answer really honestly, he said, I'd like to be with my wife, my daughter, and my dog. He said, because I am all around the world meeting with all these famous people all the time, and it's wonderful. It's really wonderful. But what I really crave is the time with my wife, my daughter, my dog.
And I could echo that. Is that like I've kind of turned on some extroversion juices in order to do the Shift Network and all
Oh,
this
yeah,
stuff.
sure.
But when it comes down to it, like a quiet, a weekend with nothing on the calendar at home with my cat and my beloved is satisfies me in a very deep way. So
Yeah.
I don't need all the rest of it.
Yeah, yeah, amen. Well, Stephen, this has been fabulous. When people want to go more deeply into your work in the Shift Network,
Just get on the email list at theshiftnetwork.com, and we got lots of stuff coming down the pike. We have new free events every week, at least new one free summit every month, and we're going to be doing all kinds of goodies in the years to come, and launching more video and audio, and get on the Facebook page as well. Just search for the Shift Network, and yeah, just get plugged in.
Cool. Great. Well, Stephen, blessings to you and on you and your work. And I hope it just continues to unfold in ways that you actually couldn't predict, but you are astonished by and grateful for.
That's a great blessing. Thank you, Michael. And may it return it to you as well.
Thanks, brother. Take
All
care.
right.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.